the studios of Defense Media Activity. Today, 5 finalists will present their ideas to a panel of senior Navy Reserve and policy and industry leaders in the first annual I3 Waypoint Challenge. I3 Waypoints is an approach to inventing, innovate something entirely new, improve on something already established, or integrate several ideas, products, or processes, rendering the former completely obsolete. The Navy Reserve is aggressively transforming and modernizing, pivoting from decades of land-based, non-maritime contributions to instead laser focus on warfighting readiness to address today's security environment and strategic competition in a maritime domain. You, our sailors and civilians, who are on the front lines of challenges and roadblocks in your daily lives, are invaluable sources of ideas for change. I3 Waypoints challenges the entire U.S. Navy to propose new or better ways for the Navy Reserve to operate. Coming up, our presenters will introduce their ideas to help shape the future Reserve Force, and at the end of the show, we'll present the I3 Waypoint Trophy. But first, let's take a moment to meet our judges. Vice Admiral John Mustin is a native of Alexandria, Virginia, and a 1990 graduate of the United States Naval Academy. Vice Admiral Mustin affiliated with the Navy Reserve after 11 years on active duty as a surface warfare officer. He is currently the 15th Chief of Navy Reserve and Commander Navy Reserve Force, and the host of our panel today. Retired Vice Admiral Andrew Woody Lewis hails from Los Altos, California. Following graduation from the Naval Academy, he was designated a naval aviator in 1987 and flew over 100 combat missions and accumulated over 5,300 flight hours and 1,100 arrested landings. After retiring, the Vice Admiral is now a Senior Vice President of Policy and Project for a nonprofit organization. Force Master Chief Tracy Hunt, a native of Marin, Virginia, completed his basic training at Recruit Training Command, Great Lakes, Illinois. After serving as Command Master Chief, Commander Navy Reserve Forces Command, Master Chief Hunt was selected by Vice Admiral Mustin as the 17th Navy Reserve Force Master Chief in October 2021. As Chairman of Global Brokerage and the Veterans Initiative Program at Cushman Wakefield, Bruce Mosler advises major tenants and investors on strategic real estate matters, managing key client relationships globally. Called one of the most energetic and successful executives in the industry, Mr. Mosler has been a formative leader at Cushman Wakefield for over 20 years. Chief Select Jasmyn Phinizy enlisted in the Navy in 2008 and graduated from Recruit Training Command. She is currently assigned to Navy Region and Mobilization Command, Jacksonville. Most recently, she was selected from 5 finalists as the fiscal year 2021's top Reserve enlisted sailor during the Reserve Sailor of the Year ceremony. Let's begin with some words of introduction from Vice Admiral Mustin.
Thank you for joining us. We are about to kick off the inaugural I3 Waypoints, where the Navy Reserve Force is going to innovate, improve, or integrate on those elements that are going to help us transform to be ready for the future. We've got 5 contestants, and we're very excited now to hear their stories and hear how they think they can help us. And more importantly, we had 107 submissions, many of which we're going to implement, even though they're not presenting today. With that, thanks again for being here, and hopefully you learned something now.
Our first presenter is Commander Scott MERICLE, coming to us live from Norfolk on the deck of the USS Baton.
Commander, it's great to see you, and I see that you're on the deck of the USS Baton. We know many great ideas originate on the Big 5 there, so very much appreciate your submission. We're all interested here to understand a little bit about your vision. You want to share with us what you're thinking?
Yeah, thanks. It's great to be here from the flight deck of the Baton here in sunny Norfolk. So I would say I don't have an innovative idea, but it's more along the improved part of that I3 Waypoints. Every year, about 2,500 sailors transition from active component to the reserve component, bringing with them a wealth of knowledge, experience, and skills. As they transition, one of the things that I think we can do much better is to remove some of the administrative barriers during the transition process and more seamlessly bring that experience from active to reserve and focusing on the warfighting aspect of our mission, our #1 priority, our only priority. There's 2 things I think we can do that would assist in that transition. 1, let members keep their active component reserve, their active component ID cards as they transition to the reserve. There's no reason why they ought to turn it in on day 1 on their last day of active duty to only turn around and get a new one in the reserve component. Just the cards alone would save about $300,000. The second thing I think we can do is let members keep their email addresses as they move from active to reserve component. So they have a link as they move and can access CAC sites. They can communicate with their new units over official email. So I think those two simple ideas would help improve that transition process and ease the burden on already overburdened ID card labs and Reserve Center N6 personnel. Pretty simple idea, but I think long overdue, just like the single pay account that we're working on. Thank you.
Fantastic. All right, I'll take the first question here, and I very much appreciate your input on this. You mentioned a buzz phrase that is very important to me, which is the link explicitly to warfighting readiness. So can you help me understand what the linkage is here and how you quantify the improvement that will generate additional warfighting readiness for our Navy and for our Navy Reserve Force?
Yes, sir. I think just as you look at the transition process, personally as a unit leader, I've seen probably 10 to 15 active component transitions over the last 2 years. And I'd say many times that process takes 2, 3, 4 months when it should really be much faster. So by reducing some of those administrative burdens, by eliminating the need for people from the reserve unit to take time out of what they're doing to go escort members onto base, to get an ID card, being able to have them come integrate sooner with the unit and the warfighting related training that we're doing, whether it's maintenance at the air wings or operational level of war training at some of the numbered fleet commands. I think reducing the admin gets them to that training sooner and helps them not feel like they're going through boot camp all over again. That's a little bit of an exaggeration, but getting them into that reserve unit sooner.
I'm tracking what you're saying there. So I think given that system is a DEER system, I think there's a DOD dependency that we need to explore also, but I love where your head is. And most importantly, I want to compliment you on that ball cap. I don't know if you can see us, but I've got Admiral Lewis here, former 2nd Fleet Commander that stood up the fleet that you are now a part of. So we'll get to him in a moment. But first, Force, do you have any questions for Commander Mericle?
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Hey, Commander, good morning. Looking good there, looking sharp. I see here's some grinding behind you there, so some maintenance going on too, huh?
Maintenance, some fire drills this morning. It's good to see all these guys running around getting ready for deployment.
Outstanding, outstanding. Well, sir, I got one question for you here. What other options that you see that can improve the active and to reserve transition, sir?
Maybe one other option that I can think of is some kind of email alert or automated email that goes to unit leadership when they're getting new members. Right now, I'll be honest, sometimes the first indication we have of somebody coming to the unit is when they show up on the unit muster for a drill weekend and we haven't had any pre-knowledge of their coming. The other thing that I think I've seen that we could do better is where we assign members initially. I know in my last unit, Submarine Group 2, we had a lot of people get assigned to an operations unit that were maintenance type personnel. And so we had to take a couple months to do some TRUIC changes and get them from the operations unit into the maintenance unit. So reducing time that people are on an IAP status as well, working to better direct assign them into a unit, I think that would also help. So they don't have to come IAP to a unit and potentially end up having to switch units within 3 months of arriving to do the whole JO apply thing and then switch units.
Great, great. Thanks a lot there, sir. Thanks a lot. Sir, I'm going to pass it over to you, sir. Bruce?
So, Commander, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us. As the business guy here, I guess I'll ask a couple of questions. Part A would be, how did you come up with the cost estimate of $300,000? Is there a return on investment on that or a payback period, as we would refer to it in the business world?
Hey, thanks for the question, sir. I came up with the 300,000 by multiplying the 2,500 active to reserve component members that would get to keep their ID card by the cost of issuing a new ID card. Google search, I saw about $132 per card. I think that was on a C-Lift Command website. So I don't have an exact figure, but I used about $120 for an ID card times the 2,500 would give about 300,000.
Hey, Scott. Good morning. So you mentioned earlier about policy. So what specifically is the policy that you would need to try to get changed? And how do you go about that?
Well, sir, I actually don't know. I haven't been able to find a specific policy, but during a prep session I had for this, I was told that there is a joint policy that requires the turn-in of the ID card. When I went on to CACT.mil, I couldn't find anything there that specifically required that. It just talked about changing things in DIRs when changing from one status to another. So I'll admit I'm a little bit ignorant on the specific policy that might need to be changed, but I've been told there would be a policy change required and would probably require some interaction with the other services.
You know, it's an admirable improvement upon the system, but to implement this, I think you need to get after it, get after the specifics of the policy and own it. I mean, that's kind of, your recommendation is you got to own it, and then you get after it. That's what I would recommend to you here. This is certainly an improvement upon, and ultimately it improves warfighting readiness to have sailors and others ready to fight, do the mission without all the administrative queef. So absolutely you should need to do that. But it's a good proposal, and one I think is worth getting after. Thanks.
Awesome. Commander, listen, thank you for your time. Thank you for the great submission on this one. I'm going to work with my N1 staff that can work from the Echelon 1 perspective to drive this. At the same time, I can work at the DoD level. Ultimately, we're going to need to talk to folks just outside of Navy Reserve, outside of Navy, to implement this. That said, I am equally eager, as you heard Admiral Lewis talk about, to eliminate the inefficiencies and, frankly, the dead time between status changes, which in the aggregate could be an Achilles heel for the readiness of the reserve force if called upon to mobilize en masse. So anyway, listen, love where your head is. Thank you for your time. Please give our regards to the folks on the waterfront there, and look forward to seeing you face to face at some point.
All right, thank you.
Roger that.
I'm backstage in the green room with our next presenter, Lieutenant Brian ADORNATO. What motivated you to present this idea to the judges?
So I came up with this idea during the SRUGRMAIN mobilization in 2020. It had bounced around my head, I'd thought about what to do, and then finally when the competition came, I knew I wanted to submit it. So I'm happy that it got out there, and I'm looking forward to the response from the judges.
Well, we're happy to have you here. Good luck on your presentation.
Thanks, Captain. Vice Admiral Mustin, thank you for inviting me today.
Excellent. Great to see you, LT. We're very interested to hear what you have to say.
Thanks. And thanks to the rest of the panelists for joining us. It's a distinguished panelist group. Thank you. So I'm a reservist in the Navy, and the unit I'm assigned to is SRUGRMAIN Sacramento. The SRUGRMAIN units support the public shipyards by sending trained reservists to augment the civilian personnel at the shipyards. 2020 was the big year for us. We sent over 1,300 sailors to support the shipyards when they were struggling with COVID. This is why we exist. It was a very exciting time. But there was a group of sailors that did not participate in this mobilization. Sailors who were in the SRUGRMAIN units, who happened to be civilians at the shipyard, were not mobilized. And I remember thinking at the time, if they weren't mobilized for this, why do we have them? We're never going to use them. I thought a little bit about it a little more, and there was a lesson in history for me. In World War II, Service Squadron 10 supported hundreds of ships forward deployed and fighting in the Pacific for months at a time. They did this with expeditionary maintenance and expeditionary repair. This is something that Vice Admiral Mustin has already said he wants our community to be able to do. This is why you need those sailors who have skills from the civilian shipyard. That is the big one. That's why we need them. I think the Navy should double down on this type of sailor. We should institute or request the authorizations to institute a Navy Reserve Technician program similar to the Air Reserve Technician program that the Air Force uses. According to statute, these people would be civilians in the shipyard, but as a condition of employment also have to be reservists in the Navy. Part of the statute also claims that they have to be engaged in the mission of the unit, whatever that is. In this case, it would be maintaining ships and helping to train sailors. If we had about 200 of these Navy Reserve technicians, you would have enough to put roughly 2 in every shop and every shipyard that SRUGRMAIN supports. And then when the traditional reservists, the SRUGRMAIN sailors, go through for their annual training, they would always have an NRT to reach out to help them with quals, help them with training, understand how to do the hands-on work. And then, of course, if it comes time to hit the mobilization button and send everyone forward, you'll have this cadre of about 200 personnel who are very well trained in the ways of doing depot-level maintenance, very difficult maintenance, that are forward to help with maintenance afield. You would also supplement that with 2,200 traditional reservists, that's roughly the size of the SRUGRMAIN community now, who bring a wide variety of skills to the table. Not only will they have good knowledge from the shipyard experience, from their annual training, but they do a wide variety of tasks in their civilian job. That combination of a core of personnel who are trained and skilled in shipyard maintenance at the highest level, combined with sailors who have a wide variety of skills and also good familiarization, is exactly what we need when we're trying to do uncertain repairs in an unknown location in a big fight. I appreciate your attention. I'm looking forward to your questions.
Fantastic, LT, and that's a great point. You hit the nail on the head on the need for the reserve force to be ready to support expeditionary battle damage assessment and repair. You're getting after something that is built into the communications that we've got in the Indo-Pacific region and in the European theater. So thanks for your great thinking. I'm also keenly aware and very interested in what our Air Force partners are doing with the technician program. So I'm curious, how do you envision the implementation? What would it take for us to get this across the finish line?
So the existing statute is basically 2 parts. The first part talks about what a reserve technician program has to do, and we comply with that, no problem. It's branch neutral. The second part talks about the budget. And when it discusses budget, it talks about the budget percolating up from the Secretary of the Navy and Secretary of the Army through the Secretary of Defense to Congress. So to get after this first, what I don't know is if the Navy can use that same path, go through DOD to Congress, or if we need changes in the existing statute. Right. So that would be the first step. Let's say we have it, we've got the authorization we need. I think we would stand up a group probably in NAVC 00 at the military personnel office that SRUGRMAIN already uses, possibly put someone on orders, similar to what we did for the reserve mobilization, and they could flesh out this program. The Air Force already has significant documentation about how they do this in terms of the granular details about leave and policies if people get hurt, all that kind of stuff is worked out. It would be a matter of getting someone in the position that can transition that to the Navy and translate it to the Navy.
Fantastic. Okay, and there are issues there for the personnel. It's about cost and authorities and benefits that
yes.
we can get after. But okay, thank you for that great one. Hey, I'm gonna toss this over to Chief Select Phinizy, who's our Reserve Sailor of the Year. I know she's got a great question for you.
Chief Select, please.
Hello, sir. How are you doing today?
Doing well, thanks.
My question for you is, right now, the Navy does not have technicians.
Right.
Are you able to estimate the cost to implement necessary changes to IT and personnel systems to accommodate this new category of personnel?
Okay. So I'll answer the question I want to answer first, which is how much would this cost the Navy? I think the cost, if we implement this by converting existing billets to reserve technician billets and existing reserve billets to reserve technician billets, then we could, from a top line kind of manpower payment situation not really cost the Navy very much at all, just putting this one guy on orders. In terms of the IT system and kind of the administrative costs of putting this together, I don't know how much it would cost to do. I'm hoping that if we keep say a captain on orders for say 3 years, figure $200,000 a year, so call it $600,000 to get that captain in. I guess that's my best guess of how much it would cost to work out some of the administrative details, or put someone in charge of working out the administrative details.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Force, did you have any questions?
Oh, thanks a lot, Chief Select. LT, how you doing?
Doing well. Thanks, Force.
All right. Nice haircut. Love it. Love the
I
haircut.
agree. I was worried about the lights, but so far so good.
All right. Have you considered using full-time support sailors, vice creating a civilian technician?
Yes, Force. In fact, one of the other contestants, Commander Shu, I have to give him credit because he brought up this very good idea of using tar sailors basically to do this. The issue with tar sailors is that they rotate. So you could put the tar sailor in there for say 4 years, but 4 years is just the apprenticeship program at a shipyard. So you get them, they get trained up, but then they're leaving. If you have a civilian in this position, a dual status person, they stay there for a long time. You get the continuity. They develop deep skills that you require for this kind of maintenance.
How long do you think this would take to stand up?
So if we have to request authorizations, that's going to take at least a year because you'd have to stick it in next year's NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act. That process will take, we'll call it a year, maybe 2. Then you start standing people up, start hiring people. That's going to take probably another year to get the billets converted. And then it takes roughly 4 years to make a journeyman level person at the shipyard after they complete their assessment. So that's why the timing is critical. We have to start now so that we get ourselves available in the time when the biggest threat is happening from our peer adversaries.
Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Okay, LT, appreciate the input on this one, and I appreciate the articulation of the vision and the execution. We'll get back to you. We got some deliberation to take care of here, but thanks again for being a participant.
Thanks, Admiral. I appreciate it.
You bet.
Our next presenter is Commander Robert Shu. How did your job inspire you with this idea?
As a Reserve Center CO, you see a lot of reservists struggling with trying to get access to information that's locked behind a firewall or put on different systems. And I just would like for us to change the way we deliver information so it can be more readily and easily accessed by our shipmates.
Well, go out there and give it what you got.
Admiral, panelists, greetings. My name is Commander Bobby Shu, and I'm here today to ask for your support in creating a new and different way of delivering information and knowledge to our Navy reservists. One that helps reserve sailors focus more on productivity rather than dealing with information technology or knowledge management issues. Let me explain. About once every 6 years or so, a car's air filter would have to be, 6 months, a car's air filter would have to be replaced. Now I could take the car to the dealer and leave it there for about half a day and drive away with the problem fixed. I'd pay about $100 for parts and labor and the privilege of drinking their terrible coffee and leafing through a stained copy of 1997's Newsweek. What I actually did was I would Google 2013 Ford Edge air filter replacement, and that would pull up a list of YouTube videos of YouTubers showing me how to do exactly that. It would have links to parts that I would need, and I would order it on Amazon, it'd get delivered to me, and I'd pay $10 and spend 5 minutes of my time doing that same job. If I have questions, I'd post it right there on the channel. The YouTuber or fellow viewer would answer my questions. Contrast that with the way that we search for knowledge in the Navy Reserves. We put everything behind a VPN firewall. We split it up into separately accessed systems that we can't index or search via a single search engine like Google. Finally, we archive that information in text files using a system called SSIC, Standard Subject Identification Code. And what that is the medieval predecessor of the Dewey Decimal System. So how do we change that? We changed it by creating a Navy Reserve YouTube channel. You can see here an example of what that might look like. In this example, we have a library of video-based content how-to guides, first aimed at new affiliate reserve sailors, but with few more advanced topics interspersed in between there. The titles are immediately engaging, and a sailor could spend a lot of time just absorbing the material, clicking from one to the next. Can you see a sailor tracking down ComNav Res 4 3060, reading that thing cover to cover, and then just because they were interested, clicking on the next instruction, reading that thing cover to cover so they can absorb more knowledge? I don't think so. I envision a future where they can type in how to cancel your flight without calling SATO, takes less than 15 minutes, and John Mach-E Mustin and Tracy, the Hammer Hunt, would have a video showing you how to do exactly that. Wouldn't that be awesome? I want to see a future where we're putting information and knowledge at the fingertips of every reserve sailor with a mobile device. You can just Google what they need. No CAC, no firewall, no control effing PDFs looking for keywords. A future where sailors are excited to find out about 10 FlexDrill units in the Norfolk area, top 5 coolest mobilizations in 2022, and thereby just absorbing the knowledge of how to be a Navy Reserve sailor. Panelists, I need your help to make that future a reality and to make Mach-E Mustin the next big YouTube star. Thank you.
Commander, thank you very much. Appreciate the passion and the new call sign. I think we're going to leave that up to the audience to determine if that has legs or not. But listen, very thoughtful submission, and I, like you, share a passion for the urgency of our efficient communications at scale so that we can eliminate administrative inefficiencies. So the way that we do this smartly, wisely, again, scalably, is critically important to us. We do some things like this via the Navy Recruiting Command and within CNP and the Personnel Command. So how is what you're suggesting different?
So I'm not intimately familiar with what we do with those other commands, but I think content focused on how to be and do for a Navy Reserve sailor, especially those new affiliates, is incredibly important. I served had the honor and privilege of serving 2 consecutive tours as a Navy Reserve Center CO. And I can't tell you the number of new reserve sailors that I've lost in that time because we could not get them engaged. Sometimes it's very hard, you know. They come in being recruited for one reason or they have something in their mind and they maybe can't get the mentorship that they need to proceed forward. I think this is a great way to attack that problem by engaging that generation, this new generation of sailors, with information that they routinely use in a place that they routinely go to get that information.
Fantastic. Okay, well, love where your head is on this, and it's a very thoughtful submission. I know that Mr. Bruce Mosler, who is our captain of industry, has a couple of poignant questions for you too.
Commander, thank you very much for your presentation. A couple of questions. Seems to me that you're very focused on accessibility, quality of training. Do you intend to, or is your intention to replace in-person training with the videos? And let me ask you, just as a business person, technology constantly changes. Have you thought about what might replace the YouTube or video down the road?
Yeah, so those are great questions, and thank you for them. So I think the answer to your first question is I never envisioned this replacing in-person training. You know, as a commander, a CO, I always felt that was invaluable to have that option, to have that, right? So, if I choose to, and I had a good video to use, I could certainly use that to provide the training, and I thought that met the objectives, but I'm not sure about mandating a replacement. As a supplement, as a tool, I think it would be fantastic, and as interest items for sailors to learn about things. As for your second question, as technology changes, we have to adapt, right? But I feel like the Navy and the Navy Reserves in specifics, we tend to be on the back end of the adaptation curve, right? Not in the front, not in the second group, but the third or fourth, maybe the 20th group, I'm not sure. This technology has been out there for a long time already, and we haven't adopted it yet, right? So I would like for us to move further up the chain in terms of where we're at with technology adoption. How do we drive that? I'm not sure I have the answer, but I think adopting something like this would go a long ways towards encouraging that culture of adopting technology.
Hello, sir. I have one question for you. This is an amazing presentation. Are there any other solutions or platforms that are out already? And if so, what caused you to bypass those?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the platforms that we use routinely in the Navy Reserves is Facebook. So I've seen the Admiral put out information, Force Master Chief put out information via Facebook. A lot of the Reserve Centers have their own. I use my own Facebook to broadcast my drill weekends, every single drill weekend. During COVID, when we were fighting disinformation and we were trying to encourage folks to get shots, I would put out videos talking about some of the precautions and trying to reassure our sailors because they weren't coming in. I did not get time to talk to them face to face, and that was the only way to do that. The challenge with some of these platforms, the Navy Reserve website or whatever else, is that you can't really search for them, right? If I'm looking for knowledge, you put it behind Facebook, right? I can't go to Google, type it in. It's not going to pull up some Facebook video that was recorded a year ago. If you created a channel or some repository where it was centralized, it was indexed, and you can manage the content, I think that would be a better way of delivering this type of information than something like Facebook.
Thank you, sir. Admiral Lewis, your thoughts?
Based upon what you just said, why wouldn't it be more cost effective to have an index site rather than have a standalone, Navy site, if you will, or Navy YouTube channel? What's the advantage of having the standalone, Navy sanctioned YouTube?
The advantage with this is that I think we can control the information better. So there's a lot of other folks out there already. Ever since I came in the Reserve Force as a lieutenant, there have been folks out there that have been putting out information exactly like this, right? There was a lieutenant commander at the time, Kelly Bemis, I think his name is. Lots of reservists have used his or her website. There's lots of unofficial channels out there. Some of the information is really good. Some of the information is not as good. I think it's important for us to control the accuracy of the information and the ability to update it and get the right stuff out there. So in the break, Admiral and I were talking about the update in policy, right? So some of the content out there, if it's not refreshed, it wouldn't reflect that update in policy. So your sailors would come and try to manipulate the system or use the system to get what they need, where they may not need to do that, right? Because the policy's already changed.
All right, well, Bobby, thank you for the great input on this. I love the idea. I think there's general acknowledgement that this can work. It's implementable. I think that we probably want to talk about organic content management and really kind of rights management. Who owns it? Is it centralized via public affairs or something else? Just to get that centralized, approved view of what goes on here. But we thank you very much. We've got some deliberating to do here, and we'll get back to you on this one. So hang in there, but thanks again for participating and for the great thinking.
Sir.
Great job.
Our next presenters are Commander Sarah McGann and Lieutenant Joshua DIDAWICK. How did the two of you come up with this idea together?
Well, actually, ma'am, we were serving together in the Navy Personnel Command Reserve Unit, and it just really came down to right place at the right time.
Yeah, there have been dozens of people that have working on this for the last several years, both military and civilian, so we're just here representing their efforts.
Well, that means there's a lot of people rooting for you. Good luck.
Thank you, ma'am. Admiral, panelists, thank you for having us. Imagine you've dedicated 20 or more years to a career, but when you get close to the finish line, you lack clarity on how to get to where you want to go, and you don't know where to turn. Most reservists will go through two transitions: retiring, awaiting pay, often called the gray area, then later on in life, retiring with pay. Reservists can be in the gray area anywhere from 1 month up to 22 years awaiting to retire with pay. 3.5 years ago, we started building what is now called Retirement Transition Outreach, RTO, in an effort to improve the reserve retirement process. This started with an idea, born out of an observation that reserve retirements were not going well. The Transition Assistance Program focuses on active duty and doesn't address issues relevant to reserve retirements. Reservists were experiencing delays in starting their retirement pay, and staff in My Navy HR were wondering why reservists didn't know what to do because after all, it's their retirement. Sir, your fighting instructions describe sailors as our asymmetric advantage. Our responsibility as leaders is to take care of our sailors and ensure warfighting readiness. We must educate and empower sailors, helping them understand and plan for one of the most valuable benefits they have as a reservist.
Admiral, distinguished panelists, over these 3 years, RTO has delivered about 60 events to over 10,000 Navy reservists at all retirement milestones. Results have included establishing direct contact with sailors approaching pay eligibility, increasing contactability with those gray area retirees in particular who are in fact still on the Navy Reserve team, sir, and yielding a 57% decrease in the time it took My Navy HR to process their application for retired pay. Admiral, we are asking for you to put money now behind your new Navy Reserve Fighting Instructions 2022 XORD, your new line of effort, Develop the Force. Sir, we think that about $500,000 out of the gate is going to have enormous impact. In fact, we think that even as little as $10,000 in the near term could address one of the biggest problems Navy reservists have, their point record. We have a couple of concepts that we want you to consider. You've already teed it up in your fighting instructions to task this out through the XORD. We're already aware that the team is forming now, but we don't have dedicated resources, sir. We can't continue the work that RTO has been doing for 3 years in an already established model. We certainly can't take it to the next level without dedicated resources.
Fantastic. LOE4 is obviously a new launch initiative in the Fighting Instructions 2022. It's being spearheaded by Rear Admiral Nancy LaCour, but my right hand and consigliere on this is Force Hunt, and I know he's got a question about this as well.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And I feel that passion. I hear it. I'm in the business of taking care of sales just like you are, so I really appreciate all y'all efforts and leadership in this area. Being a policy, though, is anything in our wheelhouse, under our umbrella, that we can, address the shortfalls in this instead of going all the way up to Second Ave?
We think some of the easiest and fastest options to move on, Master Chief, are things that can be done at the unit or reserve center level. And it's implementing, as part of Unit in the Spotlight, a regular point review. It's short trainings from, unit leadership or whomever to sailors about reviewing their point record. And even beyond that, we think for a relatively small investment, you could put together some great online trainings that could be published using social media.
On the Navy Reserve YouTube page.
Exactly. Yeah, I just heard of a great idea about that. And also things that can go on a mobile platform. So recognizing that, a lot of what sailors are going to consume now is going to probably be on their phone or a tablet.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Admiral?
This is an admirable idea, but what does it have to do with readiness to be able to fight tomorrow? Because we got to be ready to fight tomorrow as a reserve active component force. So what does it have to do with that?
Absolutely, Admiral. Issues with point records alone are an enormous distraction to many sailors. I will tell you that even just in the past week, in the past several days, we've had a conversation with a sailor who's in this building right now, who is a CELRES, who is considering transferring to the VTU, which would mean they were less able to go war fight because they know their point record is incorrect and they need more time back in their personal life to go about fixing that. That's just one sailor who's in this building right now. You can scale that across the entire Navy Reserve.
Fair enough. I'll pass it to Bruce now for his follow-on.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. It was very, very insightful. As a business person, we are constantly concerned about in the war for talent retention. You mentioned retention. So tell me how this will help retain the talent, spend a little more time on it, and what is the, and spell it if you can, what you think the real return is based on that.
Sure. Our sailors have off-ramps at certain points in their career. And when we talk about educating and empowering, you know, sailors are going to make their own decisions, but we want them to have all the information. And what other job can you have in the military where you can lean in when it makes sense, lean back at certain points in your life when it may not be as convenient, but still have the opportunity for a retirement, for health care, and things like that. It truly is a valuable benefit. But going back to the blended retirement system, we have to make sure that junior sailors understand, you know, if they want to take that off-ramp, that's fine. But understand what a few more years, what a slightly longer commitment could look like. That's what we want to do.
Thank you. Select?
Your presentation was amazing, and you've obviously put a lot of research into this with a very detailed, visible plan for sailors to better understand the retirement system. My question for you is, does Navy Personnel Command have an existing website with this comprehensive retirement information available to the average sailor? And if not, do you know of any efforts to do so?
I'll take that one. Absolutely, Chief Select. mynavyhr.navy.mil. And thank you for the opportunity to signal boost, because that website alone has transitioned. The URL has changed. A lot of our gray area retirees were familiar with going to BUPERS NPC. And so one of the things that I do when I call our gray area retirees on the phone, one sailor at a time, is even if I get only their voicemail, I leave the steer to that mynavyhr.navy.mil website. And I tell them, when you get there to mynavyhr.navy.mil, use the search bar and search reserve retirements. You will get right to the page that tells you what forms you need to do, where to mail them, and we also have, and I have editing rights to that page, so I know what's on there. It literally gives the short burst of what you need to know to correctly fill out your forms. Further, the RTO team, our team has a said page right there within Reserve Retirements, and we have our event schedule. So if you need more information, please register for an event.
Fantastic. Well, listen, both of you, thank you very much for the thoughtful submission, obviously for the great prep work that led to this presentation, which was very thorough. We've got some discussing to take care of, and then we're going to get back to you, but appreciate you being a part of this, and thanks for your great thinking.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
Thank
Admiral.
you very
Thank you,
much.
panelists.
Our final presenter is Lieutenant Commander Jonathan Calhoun. How are you feeling being today's final presenter?
Ma'am, I'm just honored to be here with such an impressive group of finalists and look forward to speaking with the judges.
Well, you're the last one up, so hit it out of the park.
Thank you, ma'am. Admiral, distinguished panelists, my name is Lieutenant Commander Jonathan Calhoun, and thank you for your time today. Admiral, in your most recent fighting instructions, you said, we must ensure our ability to mass mobilize predictably, at scale, and with seamless administrative activation workflows. Our unit participated in one of the mobilization exercises earlier this year, and having gone through that process, I think there are some ways that we can improve and further optimize the process. So my idea is on leveraging mobile technology in order to streamline the distributed mobilization process while saving valuable time for both sailors and Navy Reserve Center staff. So when we completed the most recent mobilization exercise, I realized three things. One, not all sailors have the ability to quickly access CAC-enabled sites as well as Navy email. Two, Navy Reserve Center staff all of a sudden had an influx in their inbox full of either partially or inaccurately completed documentation, resulting in more back and forth email. And lastly, unit leadership had no real-time visibility into the status of where their unit members stood in the submission of the various mobilization administrative requirements. So this process, full of non-standardized, many times duplicative administrative requirements, will make it difficult to mobilize close to 50,000 sailors within a 30-day time period. So in my civilian career, I work in banking, where I have the opportunity to meet a number of innovative, up-and-coming technology companies. And a few months ago, a board member for one of my clients introduced me to another company that he was working with, a company that's focused solely on providing mobile technology for use by the U.S. military. And our meeting was shortly after I'd gone through the mobilization exercise, so it was still fresh in my mind. And in sharing my experience with them, they quickly identified that this was the exact type of problem that they're currently solving today for multiple branches within the DoD. So while we were discussing ways to address the various challenges from the exercise, it became clear that by shifting the administrative mobilization requirements, as well as all the back and forth communication, to a mobile platform, you're reaching every sailor in a much more timely and efficient way. So I think the impact would create three main improvements. So first of all, reduce the time that it takes for sailors to receive and respond to the administrative requests by auto-populating data fields with information that we already have on file, name, address, date of birth, etc. And then allowing the sailor to just confirm or update via a mobile app on their phone, as opposed to completing the document from scratch and sending it back via email. And second benefit would be to provide real-time visibility into the status of each requirement for both the sailor as well as leadership as to whether or not it was completed correctly. And lastly, it would enable data and reporting with customizable views for all levels of leadership that doesn't involve collating multiple time-late spreadsheets, each in a different format. So in this era of strategic competition, we must be ready on day one. And by empowering sailors to use their mobile device to complete a significant portion of their pre-mobilization administrative requirements, it will improve the overall experience for the modern-day sailor, as well as ensure warfighting readiness when we mobilize the force. Thank you for your time.
Fantastic. Clearly, modernization is a critical path for our transformative readiness and our ability to compete in the future. I mean, we have got to apply and implement modern technology to do what right now is constrained by legacy systems. So thank you for reinterpreting and spitting back my language at me. I appreciate that in particular. What I'm curious about is, as we look to implementation, what kind of timeline do you think is associated with building this? Some of this we're building from scratch. Some of this we're going to leverage existing databases or other systems. How long would it take for us to see this come to fruition?
Correct, and I think the key here is leveraging what has already been done before. Mm-hmm. There are a number of companies that are working with the DoD today that have already started to use the mobile devices in order to have apps as well as sites that can be accessed. And then even just a few years ago, Ready to Serve, even though it had a CAC enabled, that was a huge, huge benefit for reservists who needed to have access to inroads and websites when they were traveling. Right. So I think that the key to a quick implementation is partnering with a third-party technology provider that already has done the infrastructure work both on the mobile app side and, most importantly, on the security and encryption on the back end, because that is one of the most critical components, especially when you're talking about all the data fields that are provided when you're mobilizing.
Roger that, and many disparate systems too, but we can certainly work the interfaces on the technology side. Okay, we're very fortunate to have our Reserve Sailor of the Year here, and I know she's got a couple of penetrating questions for you.
Great.
Thank you, Admiral. Thank you so much for your presentation. It was very informative. And the examples that you mentioned of other services doing similar applications, do you know how they migrated the privacy issues presented by PII or HIPAA? And were there any such issues that they could not overcome?
So I don't know of any specific issues they couldn't overcome, but I know that in the company, based off of the individuals' backgrounds, both on the military side as well as the IT security side, having that PII was critical. And so that was one of the things that, first and foremost, when you're communicating through a personal device, must be established ground one. And then in terms of, I'm sorry, what was the second part of your question?
How did they mitigate the privacy issues?
Right, yeah, yep, so, and that's where the back encryption and security is critical.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Well, you hit it on the head on a lot of points of some of my concerns with your presentation, sir. And really tied into the warfighting readiness piece and obviously mode ready. So with all the innovations we have now, which I'm loving it, this is what we're here for. Suppose it goes down, what we do?
Yeah, so ideally, everyone has the mobilization app on their phone. 90% of the information is already pre-populated and complete based off of what you have provided previously or during the actual mobilization exercises. And then it's just a matter of going to your Navy Reserve Center to do those final mobilization steps, putting it in your CAC where CAC signature required in some instances is necessary, and you're able to finalize that within a 10 to 15 minute period as opposed to sending multiple days at a Navy Reserve Center waiting to use a computer. Especially if there's a force of 50,000 plus,
Exactly.
They are going to be very backed up and resource constrained at each of the Navy Reserve Centers.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Master Chief.
Admiral?
So I like it, and my question really is to Admiral Mustin, and why haven't you done this yet?
We got to get busy.
But the question I would have, you laid out, you characterized some of the barriers, you know, private partner, partnerships with private industry, the security piece of it, you know, if it goes down, you know, all those kinds, you characterize that. What other barriers are there to implementation?
Yeah, so I think one of the barriers is going to be the adoption effect. And so I think about, there are certain Navy sites, think of, that are standalone, think of like NFAS, where you're going there just a couple times a year. You have to have a reminder, this is where I need to go, these are the things that I need to do. I think one of the barriers is going to be, how do we make it so that using the app and the technology is natural and recurring, and I think we can certainly do that through mobilization exercises, but I think it's also going to be similar to like what we've done with Teams. As we use one component within Teams, we get more comfortable with using other capabilities, and then there are knock-on effects, and then from that, increased adoption.
Fantastic. I love where your head is on this, and we've got some existing new products that would integrate perfectly with this already. ARC is another example where an app-based version would make a lot of sense. And I would think, to Force's point, you know, if the app goes down, there's cloud-based storage for all the information so that it could be restored pretty easily. But I love where your head is. We've got some decisions to make here, and we're going to get back to you. But thanks for the great submission. Thanks for the great thinking on this, and stand by.
Great. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're going to shortlist a couple of these. You know, one way to do this is for us each to kind of rank 1 to 5 and see if there's a natural break on.
Now that we've seen all these great ideas, we've come to the hardest part of the show.
Exactly.
Choosing a winner.
So why don't we just. All right. Well, team, after rigorous debate, we've come to a conclusion. And I will tell you that every one of these ideas was fantastic, and we appreciate you being shortlisted from over 100 submissions to the final 5. Not surprisingly, every one of your ideas has merit. Some are more implementable in a short term, others are kind of a long burn strategic implication, yet every one of them is important to us. So I appreciate your submissions and your willingness to be a part of this. Force Hunt and I are going to award a couple of things for you. So Force, let's come on over. All right. Okay. So first.
All right.
Commander McGann and Lieutenant DIDAWICK. Thank you very much for your thoughtful submissions. I can tell you that there are elements that we are going to take action on immediately. In fact, you know we are via the RTO effort and what we're doing with our retirement workshops. We're going to continue to aggressively address this, and we're going to seek your leadership in bringing this to fruition. Thank you very much for your being here, and I am happy to award you this on our inaugural I3 Waypoints. Thank you very much. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
All right, Lieutenant.
Great job, man.
Well done.
Thank you, Master
Thank you,
Chief.
Great presentation.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance. All right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Master Chief.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, gang. All right.
Slide.
Lieutenant, love your idea. I would tell you that what you have suggested to us is a policy change, and that's something that I'm going to get busy on immediately with my N1. Okay, so my personnel folks, we're going to talk about what it takes across DoD to add the technician category to what we already do as IRR, CELRES, and TAR. I wish that I could do this faster. It may be a slow burn, but it is probably the most strategic of the submissions out of the 107 that we received. So I appreciate your great thinking. I know that Admiral Galinas at NAVC is equally appreciative of the way you're approaching this, but thank you, sir, for being a
Admiral.
part of this, and it's a pleasure to make your acquaintance.
Thank you.
All right.
Hey, thank you, sir.
Thanks, Force Master.
Well done. Okay. Which leaves us with two. Both of your submissions were fantastic. Intriguing for me as a marketing technology veteran. And I can tell you that I hold dear the need for us to communicate effectively, efficiently, and also to make sure that we can affect at scale the ability to mobilize. There's great overlap between your submissions. In fact, part of our deliberations included us saying, what if we awarded both of you and said, you guys get together and figure out how to do both of these things simultaneously? And yet there is a bit of a Sophie's choice here. In this case, Bobby, we're going to go and thank you for your input and tell you that we're going to follow up with you and we will implement everything that you described, whether that's via YouTube or another branded submission. But I want to pick your brain on that and many other things that you suggested, and I can tell that we are similar characters with an interest in innovation and technology. So I want to pick your brain more. So thank you for your great submission and your fantastic presentation.
Thank you,
That's
sir.
wonderful.
Appreciate
okay.
it.
There you go.
Great job, sir. Good to
Which brings us to Lieutenant Commander Calhoun. What you described is something that I feel I'm already behind in implementing, and something that we have got to get rolled out for our reserve force to be ready to mobilize at scale efficiently and with certainty, to eliminate errors, to reduce administrative overhead. We got to get busy on this. There are several elements of your presentation that are still TBD in terms of cost and time to implement and access to different databases and systems. So I can't promise you that this is something that we're going to be able to go live on immediately. I loved your aspirational description of about a 2 to 3 week pilot. I would say we probably have some requirements definition, some features and functionality discussions to get through. But what you described would touch every one of our sailors. And you said save an hour. I would tell you it probably would save many weeks per person. So there's cost efficiencies there. There's certainly a cost investment up front to make this work, but we're going to figure out those details together. And I will have my N6, Captain Chris Pepple, immediately contact you, and we're going to get started on how we can do this. My hope would be that when we convene for the second of our I3 waypoints, roughly a year from now, we're going to provide an update with you here to say, how are we doing? Is it already on the street? Are we still working it? What is required to make it happen? But I want to get busy, and frankly, we're already behind on this. So congratulations. Thank you very much for your great ideas, for the thoughtful presentation, and it's my privilege to award you the first I3 Waypoints trophy.
Thank you, sir. I really
Congratulations.
appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You betcha. All right. How about it, gang?
Master
Yeah,
Chief.
nice
Thank you
job.
very much.